What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the first regular season game of the NLL Flash. That's right. We're done with the preseason. We're done with the previews. We're finally here in week one with our own regular season edition of the show, the NLL Flash. My name is Tino Fera, your host for this evening and for the rest of these shows going forward. So let's talk about what we're going to be seeing going forward. The NLL Flash is going to be a weekly show, quickly talking about the games that we had just seen over the past weekend, but mostly teeing up the upcoming games for the following week. We will, of course, be going over some highlights and so on, but we're going to be bringing on a new guest every week, whether that's an analyst, whether that's a player, a coach, whoever it may be, to preview what we in the Flash, as well as with the public, have decided is going to be the upcoming game of the week. So before we get too much into this episode, talking about what our game of the week this week is, let's introduce our first ever guest throughout our regular season. And who better to have back for the first game of the season other than Mr. TSN, Mr. Halifax Thunderbirds, I guess, on those broadcasts too. Hey, Patty Gregoire. Pat, how are we doing this evening?
What an intro. What an absolute wagon of an intro. Thank you very much, Tino. But no, I'm excited. It's game week. You mentioned it's in Halifax. That means it's chowder week too. So I'm also sorts of fired up. Well, just get me to Halifax now.
Yeah, let's get rolling right away here. So I should say as well, Pat, of course, you will have the call on TSN and ESPN for the game of the week here. So why don't we just hop into it? Like we said, the game of the week this week is going to be Philly versus Halifax. Is taking place this Friday, December 2nd, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern at the Scotiabank Center. So, Pat, let's dive into both of these teams here. The Philadelphia Wings have recently, there were rumors about this throughout the offseason, but have officially put Kyle Jackson on their holdout list. How much do you think that's going to affect these Wings?
I think it's quite the impact because we saw what this offense looked like when Kyle Jackson came into this lineup. He gave them a different look on that left side. He's super athletic, plays a high energy game, and I think it adds some pressure on a guy like Hunter Lemieux, who I think is going to be a great pro, but he's stepping in right away. Now he's likely going to have to be that fourth lefty. It's a lot more pressure on Rambo and Reardon and Vitarelli. Like, these guys now have to produce, but let's be honest. The right side of the offense, I think, is going to be the driver for this team. And it's now proving that it's going to have to, because there's not quite as much balance without Jackson in that lineup. They go out and get Joe Resetarits for a reason. Runner-up in the MVP. He's one of the greatest American box lacrosse players to pick up a stick. And that's why Paul Day went out and got him for that reason. He's going to score a ton of goals this year. We saw what he's able to do in Albany. He's going to have to do the same thing here because this was an offense that, quite frankly, underperformed all last year. So they made some tweaks, the biggest tweak being Resetarits, but I do think losing a guy like Jackson is going to change a little bit of that dynamic, because he is one of the guys that was just always constantly moving his feet.
If I'm not mistaken, Coolbet actually has Philadelphia as the underdogs as well coming into this game. But let's move over to the home team now, the Halifax Thunderbirds. It seems like, I don't necessarily want to say he's been slept on, but a piece with Halifax that hasn't really been getting a lot of talk recently has been the addition of Randy STAATS, basically coming over for free. What will he add to this Thunderbirds lineup?
It's crazy you say that. I feel like some days I'm screaming at from the top of the mountain saying, like, Randy STAATS is a Halifax Thunderbird. Like, this is real life, folks. Get ready, get excited, because he is going to add a great dynamic to that offense. Their righties are already absolutely stacked. And I've said this a few times now, but you know, if you have an opportunity to go out and get an elite talent like Randy STAATS, even though you don't need another righty, you just go and do it. And that's exactly what Kurt Stiers did. He has done such a great job building this offense, and now he's fine-tuning it. And we saw, again, similar to Philly, maybe not to the extent, but there were times during this season last year where the offense just looked stagnant. It felt like the righties and the lefties just weren't on the same page. The righties were sharing the ball well, but the lefties weren't. And then the lefties were shooting from there was never a time when both sides were really working well. But now when you look at this offense, Randy, he is one of the best feeders in the game. He's one of the best shooters in the game. He is such a top echelon talent. I do truly believe that he has the capability to surpass his career marks, hit that 100-point total and possibly be an MVP for this team. I really do. I think he could be, hearing his name at the end of the season as an MVP candidate. He has some chemistry with some of these guys on the team, most notably Cody Jamieson. So seeing him feed Jamieson from, east-west, I can't wait to see it. I think this is going to be great. And to kind of go off your point quickly about him going under the radar, I guess it's because you saw what we've already talked about. Joe Resetarits goes to Philly. And then another two great righties, Crowley, Dixon, go to San Diego in free agency. And in a trade that ended up being, an absolute steal, in my opinion, he comes into this lineup and really, really, really just ups the ante with how dangerous this offense is.
So fired up for that first game. Can't wait to get started here. But we obviously don't want to shortchange the rest of the league as well, because there are 5 other games going on this weekend. Pat, if you were to pick a storyline that sticks out to you of those remaining 5 games, is there one that's at the forefront of your head?
No, I feel like each game there's a ton of great storylines, but if I had to pick one out, I think it's Seals and Riptide. And is the Riptide, are they legit? Like, is this really going to be their coming out party? And let's be honest, if they come out and they lose and don't really have a great showing, I'm not saying that this isn't the season where they can finally break out and make the postseason, but I think just with the anticipation between both these teams, we know how dynamic that offense is for New York. We know how dynamic the offense is in San Diego. I think this could be an absolute barn burner, like last goal wins type of game. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think that New York really, there's so many people that are calling them sleepers. I don't think they can be sleepers anymore. Like, I think this is a team that has high expectations coming into this year. Jeff Teat, like, he's on MVP watch. He's not just a rookie coming into this league anymore. We saw what he was able to do, like historical season. They add Riley O'Connor, who I think is going to have a phenomenal season on that left side. So we know their offense is going to be good. Stephen Orleman is a young, budding goaltender. Well, it's time for him now to not just be a good young goalie, he has to be a good goalie in the National Lacrosse League, and that defense in front of him has to help him out. So if the defense can be improved, if the goaltending's solid, this team certainly can make their mark. And what better way than, at home, having the top dog in San Diego, the odds-on favorite to win the NLL Cup, handing them their first loss in the first game of the year.
Just to list off the remaining games, we obviously already talked about Philadelphia taking on Halifax. That's on Friday. And then on Saturday, in order here, we have the Warriors taking on the Rock. That one's guaranteed win night in Toronto. Yikes. We have the Firewolves taking on the Bandits, the Seals versus the Riptide, like you just mentioned, the Nighthawks versus the Swarm, the Mammoth versus the Rush, and then the Desert Dogs, Panther City, and Roughnecks. They're all on a bye week. They won't play until week 2, unfortunately, for them. Patty, in terms of the cool bet odds for these games, it's very interesting because almost every game has a very clear favorite and a very clear underdog. I'm excluding the Mammoth versus the Rush there because those are both teams are coming in at -110, if I'm not mistaken. But of all of the games, excluding the Mammoth versus the Rush, which of those games do you think is most likely to have an upset?
Now, this one, again, I think is really tricky because it is week 1. We don't know what to expect with a lot of teams. We've seen them in preseason. We've had our preview shows, but I think there's two games, and I won't go into this one too much because we did talk about it being the game of the week, but I do think Philadelphia definitely has an opportunity to go into Halifax and upset the Thunderbirds. Yes, I know the Thunderbirds had a 2-0 record against them last year, but Philadelphia, if Zach Higgins can stand on his head and Joe Resetarits can go out there and shoot the lights out, and this offense we didn't even talk about it, Jeff McComb coming in, one of the smartest minds in the game of lacrosse. Like, if he can really mold this offense early on, definitely they can go into Halifax, into the nest, and upset them there. But the other game that I was looking at, and it's crazy to say this, but Rochester and Georgia, like I think Georgia's going to win? Yeah, probably. But I didn't think that they were going to be minus 182 over Rochester. Like this is a team that has a lot of changes. They're definitely a different looking team, and they don't have Mike Poulin in that anymore. It's Craig Wendy. Craig Wendy has not proven that he can be a legitimate number one in this league. So they have a youngster in Brett Dobson. So obviously he's feeling a little bit of pressure. He knows that it's his cage to lose or to win. So that's a little bit of a concern to me. Yes, Rochester, I know they're dead last in odds, but this is a team that, always plays tough. It seemed like last year they were in a ton of really close games. I like the way that their offense is really shaping up. They add Connor Fields. I think this is a team that's getting slept on quite a bit. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? Probably not. But is this a team that's going to compete every single night and battle? Absolutely. And if their goaltending situation with Ryan Hartley, like if he's healthy and if he's the goalie that we saw during stretches in his young career so far, why can't they go into Georgia and upset them? Of course, the big thing is Lyle Thompson, Q, like that offense certainly has a lot of weapons, which I'm excited to see. But again, there's some new bodies in that lineup. There's a lot of, variables. Can they gel quickly? So again, this is why week one of the NLL is so special, because really it's not like the National Football League or the NHL where we have all these games televised and we can see, like, we don't get to see a lot of the preseason games. So this is like our real first taste of seeing what some of these rosters are going to look like.
Patty, we are approaching the end of the episode here, which means we are that much closer to game one. And let me tell you, I'm pretty sure I can speak on behalf of everybody. We're so excited to see you back on our TV screens, finally. So, Pat, thank you so much for joining us for the first regular season game here of NLL Flash. Who else would we get other than you? For Pat Gregoire and myself, Tino Fera, you've been watching the NLL Flash, and we will see you next week for another episode.